The dark 11th hour draws on and sees us sold to every evil power we fought against of old. Rebellion, rapine, hate, oppression, wrong and greed are loosened to rule our fate by England's act and deed. The faith in which we stand, the laws we made and guard, our honour, lives and land are given for reward. To murder done by night, to treason taught by day, to folly, sloth and spite, and we are thrust away. The blood our fathers spilt, our love, our toils, our pains, are counted us for guilt and only bind our chains. Before an empire's eyes, the traitor claims his price. What need of further lies? We are the sacrifice. We ask no more than leave to reap where we had sown, through good and ill to cleave to our own flag and throne. Now England's shot and steel beneath that flag must show how loyal hearts should kneel to England's oldest foe. We know the war's prepared on every peaceful home. We know the hell's declared for such as served not Rome. The terror, threats and dread in market, hearth and field. We know when all is said, we perish if we yield. Believe we dare not boast. Believe we do not fear. We stand to pay the cost in all that men hold dear. What answer from the north? One law, one land, one throne. If England drives us forth, we shall not fall alone.
Well, hello and welcome to another Restore Live. Restore Live going out on Thursday evening at 8 o'clock as it was planned. And we're here for a reason, and the reason being, well, if Sinn Fein doesn't like our principles, do we have others that we can change, that we can adapt in order to suit Sinn Féin's requirements? I say that again. If Sinn Fein doesn't like our principles, do we have others that we can change to and adopt in order that we can make provisional IRA Sinn Féin happy? Now, this evening, there's various things happening, and I'm sure that there's a lot of people that is focused on what's happening in the Irish Republic. Today, there were some people, and they were violently attacked on the streets of Dublin in Parnell Square, and I have to say that my heart goes out to the people that would be affected, also the families of those people, and for what happened to them. And right now, the Irish Republic, it looks as if it's in turmoil, and it looks as if it's going to be in turmoil for quite some time. So yet again, my heart would go out to the people in the Irish Republic who would be affected by the events of today. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart, and I mean that very, very sincerely. Last evening, I attended an event in Banbridge, that's sort of County Down, and it was about a man called James Elliott who was abducted and murdered on the 17th and the 19th of April in 1972. This is a little brochure of last night's event, and I talk about this event first because I believe that it's very, very important that unionists of all shades, would get behind this family's attempt, the Elliott family's attempt, to get justice for what it is that happened to James Elliott. There was three sons of James Elliott at that event last evening, and I have to say, after hearing the delivery on stage by the Northern Ireland Human Rights Watch, after hearing the delivery of what happened to this man, my heart would go out to them, and I would definitely recommend that each and every one from the unionist perspective would stand alongside this family and give them your support in whatever way you can. And later on the social media platforms that we're involved in, what we'll do is that we'll make available some details in where that you can support this family's attempts to get some sort of justice for what it was that happened to their father. James Elliott was abducted and murdered on the 17th and 19th of April in 1972. Um, it transpires that he was taken across the border, and he was I'm going to say he was tortured. Now, the official narrative from the authorities in Northern Ireland is that he wasn't tortured, but there was various evidence. We heard the evidence last night well, the Undertaker's report was one of a man who was tortured. That's what the Undertaker said. That's what the Undertaker seen. And there's various questions to be asked with reference to the murder of James Elliott. And I would hope that what we could do is we could do this story properly in the very, very near future. So why are we here? Why are we here this evening? We're not going to really stay for long. We're here because in the past few days we hear yet again that there is movement in terms of what it is that our politicians are prepared to do in order to get back into Stormont, in order to get the institutions, that is what's known as the appeasement process, to many, many unionists. We're here to discuss and to talk about what it is that we've seen happening in the past few days, and really to impress upon people that it's not good what we see, and if what we are hearing is right, well, there would be no turning back from a mistake that could be made in the very near future by our political leaders to resurrect the appeasement process, to facilitate the provisional IRA and Sinn Fein, to destabilise Northern Ireland, to destroy Northern Ireland, to extract more concessions from the British government for themselves, whilst the unionists are being treated like second-class citizens. Now, what was the premise of the Belfast Good Friday Agreement whenever the people that did sign up to it, whenever they signed up to it? The premise of the Belfast Good Friday Agreement would be that it was meant to be an agreement. It was meant to be a peace process. It was meant to be a process in where that no one side could be left out of. It was meant to be a process in where that it required cross-community support, cross-community consent, triple locks, to ensure that all sides to this peace agreement, quote unquote, to ensure that all sides were treated in a fair and equitable manner. But what has happened since the signing of the Belfast Good Friday, I'm going to call it an appeasement process, what has happened is that Sinn Fein IRA have extracted concession after concession from the British government. Whatever they ask for, they get. And if they don't get, what they do is they threaten to go back to do what it is that they do best. And what do they do best? Well, we've seen it in the past where they use the ballot on one hand and the Armalite in the other hand. They use the bomb in one hand, whilst that they suggest that they're peaceful, that all they want to do is to make peace with their neighbours. When unionists know that that's not the case, that is absolutely not the case. So what I want to do is I want to share my screen for a moment, and I want to just play something that has came about over the past few days, and then we'll go and we'll examine what the appeasement process actually is. I've asked some people to list a few things, a few items which the Republicans have got over and above unionists. And we're going to read from that list, and we're going to just remind people of how one-sided this process, this so-called peace process, actually is. So just bear with me whilst I share my screen. And I want you to listen to something that happened in the Westminster Parliament in the past few days. Just bear with me.
Our objective is to ensure that Northern Ireland's place in our biggest market, the United Kingdom, is restored and protected in law. Will the Secretary of State work with us to ensure that where goods are moving from Great Britain to Northern Ireland, they are not subject to EU customs processes that are neither necessary or fair or right, and that save for animal health and the risk of smuggling, that there should not be checks on those goods?
I thank the right honourable gentleman for his question, and I very much enjoy working with him on a regular basis to try and achieve the aims that he has put out. I would say that we have gone a long way in the Windsor framework in this space so far, but I look forward to continued engagement with him in the next few days, because we do need to find a resolution to these issues that also means that we can reform Stormont and deal with other domestic issues in Northern Ireland.
So now that we've taken that down, let's just try to explain to people what has just happened on that video clip. So Jeffrey Donaldson is asking Chris Heaton-Harris, that will he ensure that there's no checks on goods coming from England, Scotland and Wales to Northern Ireland, as per what it should be for citizens right around the United Kingdom? The way that it was intended is that everybody from within the United Kingdom, whether that be England, Scotland, Wales or Northern Ireland, everybody should be on an equal footing in terms of their trade. Now here we have Jeffrey Donaldson asking Chris Heaton-Harris yesterday to ensure that there's going to be no checks on goods. And Jeffrey Donaldson then goes on to say, well, okay, there can be checks on animal feeds and, on livestock and so on, agricultural, and there can be checks for the purpose of smuggling. Now, let me explain something here. Any goods that travel from within the United Kingdom should not have to go down a green channel. They should not have to be subjected to EU-inspired customs and regulatory border. There should be no data, digital or otherwise, given to a foreign power, being the EU. There should be no data. Article 6, the Act of the Union, which we know has been disapplied according to the Supreme Court case last year. It was successfully argued by the government that the government can do whatever they want. That they can make laws, they can break laws, they can change laws, they can do whatever they want with laws, because Westminster Parliament is sovereign. And whilst the arguments that we were making in the Supreme Court just this time last year, on the 29th of November, the 1st of December, myself and others went to the Supreme Court in London to argue that our rights as British citizens, our rights in terms of trade, is not the same as people in England, Scotland and Wales. We have been removed from our rights. We are not on an equal footing as per Article 6 of the Act of the Union. We're not on an equal footing with the rest of the United Kingdom. And why? Why did this happen? It happened because that the Irish government, the EU, Sinn Fein IRA, the Alliance Party, the Ulster Unionist Party, and others, the SDLP, and whoever else, they argued that, well, if there was a border between Northern Ireland and the Irish Republic, there would be violence again. Let's not put any gloss on it. That's what they said. That's what they threatened. That's what Leo Varadkar, the Taoiseach, the current Taoiseach of the Irish Republic, well, didn't he go around Europe with a picture of a bombed out customs post on the way into Newry there, where what the Leo Varadkar suggests? Well, if it is that there's as much as a camera on the border between Northern Ireland and the Irish Republic, we could end up back to the IRA, the provisional IRA, and their bedfellows. We could end up back to where they are blowing up places in Northern Ireland yet again, like they did in the past. So the British government listened to this. The Ulster Unionist Party, well, they would have egged it on because they are Europhiles. They're Ulster Unionists. They're Doug Beattie. What did he say? He says that he was he was a constitutional unionist, but he's not an economic unionist. He's willing to separate his unionism, split it down the middle. Let me explain something. The United Kingdom is made up of two portions. One is the political union. The other is the economic union. And if you're going to separate yourself and say that you're an economic unionist or you're a political unionist, a constitutional unionist, but you're not an economic unionist, well, are you really a unionist? Why is it that unionists in Northern Ireland always have to be on the receiving end, getting the worst of both worlds? Why is it that we always have to take the pain? Why is it that we are always treated as second-class citizens? Why is it that our political leaders do nothing in a meaningful, proactive way, in a way that would defend, protect, and enhance our rights as citizens of the United Kingdom? Why is it that our political leaders here in Northern Ireland are always they're always ganged up on? They're always expected to make the compromises when nobody else makes compromises. Why are we in this position? Why is it always pushed upon unionism to give? Why? In a place called Pembroke College, just not last year, the year before, Conor Murphy of Sinn Fein, well, he told the British government and all who was listening in no uncertain terms, and we have the video clip whereby that it is told of exactly what Conor Murphy said. He said in no uncertain terms that if the protocol is tampered with, if the constitutional changing protocol, which places a border in the North Channel, the Irish Sea, if the constitutional changing protocol, which designates unionists in Northern Ireland as second-class citizens, if that constitutional changing protocol, which has disapplied the Act of the Union, Article 6 specifically, disenfranchising unionists in Northern Ireland from their rights as British citizens in terms of trade, if that constitutional changing protocol, the one that has removed us from being on an equal footing, if that constitutional changing protocol is tampered with in any way, shape or form, Sinn Fein were walking away from the process. And that's why unionists are in this position today. Now, as a unionist, I assess what it was that Conor Murphy did, what it was that provisional IRA Sinn Fein actually did. Well, they held a gun to the British government's head, so to speak. And they said, well, if unionists don't get that border, if unionists are not made second-class citizens, if there's not a border, if the border between Northern Ireland and the Irish Republic is not physically lifted, if it's not transplanted at Larne, at Belfast and at Warrenpoint, if that's not done and if that doesn't stay in place, well then, Sinn Fein is walking away from the process. Now, I kid you not, and this is to the people that is listening this evening, because I then question what type of a unionist would give in to such blackmail. What type of Ulster unionists would give in to that type of blackmail? What type of democratic unionists would give in to that type of blackmail? And they can, you know, fill the room with words. They can talk about this, that, and the other. But when it boils down to it, we have a border in the North Channel. We are separated from our brothers and sisters in England, Scotland, and Wales. We have been removed from the promises that were contained within Article 1 of the Northern Ireland Act 1998, the Belfast Agreement, in where that it said that there couldn't be constitutional change without a referendum being put to the people. You see, all of that doesn't matter when it comes to when Sinn Fein threatens that they're walking away from a process. Sinn Fein gets what it is exactly that they want. Now, I ask the question to people that are watching and people that come along to watch this in the very near future. Is this a process in where that any self-respecting unionist could be part of? The dice is loaded. Unionists are always going to lose within this process. Should Jeffrey Donaldson only be asking for, well, that there's going to be no checks in this EU-inspired customs and regulatory border, which is governed by the European courts, basically. The European, I'll get it in a second, of the ECHR, I'm in my head here, European Convention on Human Rights. The European, it's a European court, basically. Are we going to be governed by EU laws, is what I'm saying here? You know, are we going to have our trading circumstances dictated by the EU, whilst Westminster has absolutely no say in the trading circumstances of the United Kingdom? And make no mistake, that's exactly what is happening. Now, then there's another problem. And I want to literally to explain to people, impress upon people what it means if Jeffrey Donaldson goes back into Stormont before Christmas, which is looking like that he intends doing. And he intends coming and trying to impress upon unionists that this is for the greater good, that this is for the better, that, you know, that you have to be second-class citizens, that you have to have an EU-inspired customs and regulatory border between you and the rest of the United Kingdom, that the Belfast Agreement doesn't work for unionism, that the Act of the Union, which gives you your rights in terms of trade, which puts you on an equal footing with other people in England, Scotland and Wales, well, I believe that the DUP, as it was teed up with Peter Robinson just a few days ago, telling us that we've got a good deal, that we've got a great deal, that, well, we haven't got all we want, he said. It's a bit like, say, you know, playing snooker. You know, you don't need to clear the table all in one go, he said. Well, Peter, you know, it's no use playing without a cue. It's no use playing in where that you're not getting a chance to pot a ball. There's no use playing in where that the scores are being loaded in favour of the provisional IRA, just in case that they go back to causing violence again. So that's how I see this snooker table analogy. And, you know, we're here to impress upon people that what Jeffrey Donaldson could be potentially going to do is to put the final nails in the coffin of Northern Ireland Unionism and condemn us to a life governed by, well, the EU, directed by Ireland. Because let's make no mistake, Ireland right now is a vassal of the EU. What the EU say, Ireland has to do. That's why they're in the turmoil that they are in tonight. They can't, they do things contrary to what is good for their society because that they're, well, what was it Micheál Martin said? He said that he wants nothing to do with the backward idea of sovereignty. That's what Micheál Martin said. And Leo Varadkar is absolutely no better. So why is it, and we're back to this again, why is it that unionists in Northern Ireland always have to take the pain? No gain whatsoever. Make no mistake, people, if Jeffrey Donaldson rules, unionism is over. We are unionists in name only. It's only a short step into this so-called New Ireland afterwards. So we really have to be thinking about what it is that we want as unionists. Are we prepared to stand up and fight for what it is that we believe in? And when I say fight, using weapons, of course, but weapons of words, standing toe-to-toe with anyone that would try to take us against our will into something that our forefathers fought to keep us away from. That many in this country has put on a uniform to stand against, that many people lost their lives for, that many people just a few days ago in Remembrance Day, they went out and they remembered the people who stood for Northern Ireland and stood up for the people of Northern Ireland, giving their lives down throughout the years. Is our DUP leadership, are they prepared to walk on the graves of every single person that ever stood up for Northern Ireland down throughout the years? Are we asking for anything that's not ours? Are we asking for anything which is unfair, which is over and above, which is unreasonable? Or are we just asking for to be treated fairly? Are we just asking for our rights to be respected? Are we just asking for equal rights on an equal footing as per the Act of the Union, Article 6 of the Act of the Union? Are we just asking for to be reinstated as full unionists from within the United Kingdom, not second-class unionists? I do hope that there's not enough numbers in the DUP to create the rollover which will cause the destruction of the entire United Kingdom. I do hope that people from within the DUP stand up against the leadership and what I believe that the leadership are prepared to do. Who are they working for? Are they working for ordinary unionists if they roll over? Or are they working for their own political careers? That's a question. That is a real question. Now, what I want to do is that I want to go to some things that has been given to IRA Sinn Fein as a result of this appeasement process. And I want to read from a list, and I want people to listen very, very carefully to how much of a second-class citizen that you've become in your own country, in your own land. You know, how many people had to die for being British in our own land, murdered by cards and the IRA hand. The IRA crept back to their bed after leaving so many people dead. A woman, a child, a father, a son, a soldier, a cop, just anyone. That's part of a poem that myself and another person had written just last year, and I'll play it here at the end. You know, it beggars belief that in 2023 we are faced with a scenario like no other in the history of unionism in Northern Ireland, in where that our political leaders are prepared to consider rolling, prepared to consider dispensing with unionism, with the greatest union that the world has ever seen. We're faced with dire consequences should the DUP actually roll in the coming days and in the coming weeks, and try to tell us at the same time that it's all good, that don't worry, there's no sense, and I use that word quote unquote, there's no sense of a border in the North Channel, There's no sense of a border in Larne and Belfast and Warrenpoint. What is your sense? Your sense is your taste, your touch, your smell, what you hear, what you see. There's no sense of it. You can't see it. It's a digital border. However, if it checks like a border, if it gives data for checking to an EU customs and regulatory requirement like a border, if it does that, if it's an EU-inspired customs and regulatory setup dictated by the EU, well, if it does all that, if it walks like a border, if it talks like a border, if it checks like a border, it is a border. And it's a border which separates Northern Ireland Unionists in Northern Ireland from England, Scotland and Wales. Now, this is all wrong because there is agreements in place which told us that if we go along with this so-called peace process, this could never, ever happen. And it's about time people began to realise that unionism has been swindled, that the Belfast Agreement, it was a disguise, it was built for appeasement, swindle and lies, that the peace, it's only a farce when the IRA can threaten go back to violence. The peace is a farce. The IRA guns are still there, and London, they're afraid of another bomb scare. And that's the reason whenever Conor Murphy, just 2 Septembers ago, said that if the protocol is altered in any way, Sinn Fein are walking away from the process, and as a result, the DUP are meant to, they're meant to capitulate. They're meant to be subjected to all of the pain. Unionists, we're second-class citizens in Northern Ireland if we don't stand up for our rights. And that's all we're asking for, is we're asking for our rights to be respected. We're asking for the people that we elected, the people that had a specific mandate to stand against this border in the North Channel. We're asking that they do their job and they don't roll over and they don't give in, because to give in would be to put the final nails in the coffin of Northern Ireland Unionism and by extension the rest of the United Kingdom. So I'm going to take a look at some of the things that Sinn Fein IRA have been getting over the course of since 1998 going forward. And we're not really going to stay here for long. We've been here for a bit of time, and I just want to read a few things as I go. So we have unrepentant, convicted terrorists in government. That's what we have. You've got to excuse me here, people. Wait a second. We have royal pardons and get out of jail letters gifted to IRA terrorists. We have the imposition of EU regulations, directive, rules and laws, which is overseen by the European Court of Justice. That's the one I was looking for, the ECJ I was looking for. So the imposition of EU regulations, directive, rules and laws as overseen by the European Court of Justice. We're the only country out of 194 nations that has an internal customs border run and administered by a foreign external commission. We have the removal of cross-community voting mechanism and the partition of concern, a core part of what is in the EU protocol legislation. In other words, when it was to give Sinn Fein a leg up in the past, well, there had to be cross-community acceptance of anything that came through the Stormont operation. But now that, unionists are now not in the minority, but certainly can be placed in a minority because a conglomerate of minorities are ganging up and all want to be part of this EU vassal situation here in Northern Ireland, where they can't change the rules, where they can't make the rules, where they can't actually govern for themselves. because this conglomerate of minorities have ganged up, well, we are the cross-community voting mechanism, and a petition of concern has been removed. There's no free port zones for Northern Ireland. In Wales there's 2, in Scotland there's 2, and in England there's 8. They deliver billions of pounds of inward investment and create thousands of jobs, but none for Northern Ireland to rejuvenate Belfast, Londonderry and Mid-Ulster, which would be beneficial, by the way, for every single person in Northern Ireland. The definition of a victim, where the perpetrators are equal to innocent victims, as per the Northern Ireland Act 2005. Now, bear with me for a sec. I've got it. Here we go. The Irish government, we have them involved in what was known as Strand 1 of talks, negotiations and agreements regarding the NI internal affairs and system of governments. Now, that was never, ever agreed. And according to the so-called sacrosanct Belfast Good Friday Agreement, well, that wasn't to happen. So unionists have had to take that. We have scores of illegal IRA memorials across Northern Ireland, which re-traumatizes victims, IRA victims. We have the rollout of dual Irish road street signage, with only 15% requiring to have those signs actually erected. Now, we pre-warned of that some time ago, that this is part of a Republican nation-building strategy, and we're using Shana Walsh's words, that they would green Northern Ireland street by street using the Irish language. And here we have a situation whereby that when things are in place and we were told, oh no, well, they won't do that, there's checks and balances. Now we see that there's applications made in areas where those Irish signs are not welcome, in unionist areas, which will cause conflict, which has the potential to set back reconciliation for decades to come. The Irish language has been weaponized and is going to be used against unionists. You see, the DUP would have agreed to that, New Decade, New Deal, that they would allow for an Irish language commissioner. Let's go on and let's explain some more. We have a convicted, unrepentant terrorist on the policing board. He must be named Jerry Kelly, a man who runs around this country glorifying the terrorism to which he participated in, with no concern, absolutely no concern, for the victims that he created. We've hundreds of millions on additional welfare payments over and above the UK standard. We have removal of the so-called bedroom tax. Now, some of these things actually help people, but we see what's happening from within the budget today, yesterday and the day before. There's not enough money now for the services because the money is being spent on the wants of extremists and not the needs of people. And this affects nationalists, Catholics, Republicans, the same way as it affects unionists, Protestants, and loyalists. We have an Irish Language Act with a commissioner, enforcer, with legislative power, with a High Court judge, with the legislative power of a High Court judge. Now, the same doesn't apply when it comes to Ulster Scots. It was given a lesser standing with lesser money placed towards Ulster Scots. There isn't an even playing field. Everything that happens, it favours the Republicans not going back to killing people, murdering people, maiming people, blowing places up, destroying this economy as they did on the years gone by. And sooner, some people do say that enough is enough when those type of things are happening. We have a Parades Commission which restricts and controls the legal, I say again, the legal expression of British culture. We have 50-50 police recruitment, but not extended into the nationalist judiciary. Why is there not 50-50 recruitment across the judiciary here in Northern Ireland when there is in terms of policing? Why has this happened? Is it because that our unionist politicians don't witness these things? They don't see these things? They don't stand against these things? Is it that they pay lip service and then they forget about it? Is it that nothing ever happens? Nothing on the unionist side happens at all? That they don't want the flack? That they don't want the hassle? That they just want to get on with their day? That they do not want to fight meaningfully and proactively for you in a way that defend, protect and enhance Britishness here in Northern Ireland? We have, I'm just going to read some more. We have a community restorative justice setup. Now, bear with me. It's the way that I'm going down this. It's the way that this is being read. It's not my fault. The way that this is bouncing around the screen. You got to excuse me. So we have a community restorative justice Ireland run and administered by convicted terrorists. A parallel policing service. They drafted and carried out a survey that led to the so-called biggest review of policing from Patton, the South Armagh Policing Review, in where that the Ulster Unionists actually helped them with this, and in where that, well, what was requested was that Republicans could police their own areas, that the RUC or the PSNI would move back, that the Garda Síochána on the other side of the border would move back, and basically they would let the Republicans be the police force from within their own areas. And that was to be rolled out and extended right around the border if Unionists hadn't stood up against what it was that the Ulster Unionist Party tried to implement behind the backs of ordinary Unionists. You know, the people that lost their lives to these terrorists now see the terrorists making the rules. And, you know, they would be turning in their graves, and the family members of those victims of those terrorists who stood up against those terrorists, who put on a uniform to defend against the terrorism that they were perpetrating, well, they are shocked to their core. They are re-traumatized when they see that, well, the premise of law enforcement has been turned on its head. We have no UK border force carrying out immigration and customs controls at Northern Ireland borders. It's a free-for-all, whether it's people, diesel, cigarettes or alcohol smuggling. The only country out of 184 nations that has an internal customs border. We have classification of the GAA as a sporting organisation, which justifies the naming of their grounds, tournaments and teams after IRA terrorists. And they're delivered in terms of funding, they're delivered on a disproportionate basis. They're given money way beyond what other sports get. Let's take for an example here. Windsor Park at 29.5 million for the building of the National Stadium. Ulster Rugby, 19.5 million for my recollection. And it is suggested that Casement Park will cost somewhere in the region of upwards of 160 plus million. There's no fairness, people. There's no fairness. And I have a prediction with reference to Casement Park. Once they get their funding, once they get their stadium, let's see, is there a portion of that ground, they call it after Roger Casement. Let's see where Bobby Story fits into that. Will they call it a Bobby Story stand? Will they make a portion of that ground to do with Bobby Story? This is coming. Make no mistake, our government is funding the glorification of terrorism, provisional IRA terrorism, which has murdered and maimed many of our nearest and dearest down throughout the years. And our unionist politicians are happy to roll over whilst this happens. We have no redress on IRA collusion by the Irish government ministers who financed, funded, provided arms training for, safe havens for, propaganda campaigns for well, what we now know to be Irish state-sponsored terrorism. And we're going to come to that before we close this evening. We have legacy bias, where protecting the command structure of the IRA terrorists is paramount. We have no actions, funding, or initiatives to strengthen the union. We have no equal and opposite reaction to the IRA Sinn Fein rewriting of history, to their narrative. Now, it just so happens in the past number of months, ordinary unionists, grassroots unionists, a grassroots movement has risen up right around this country to say that enough is enough, and if the politicians won't fight meaningfully and proactively on behalf of the unionist people of Northern Ireland, well then, ordinary people will do it for them. Stormont Waste. We have private finance initiatives, loans taken out, which were led and directed by Sinn Fein, which created massive interest payments, 4.4 billion more than the projects are actually worth. The payback term goes out beyond 2044, taken from your block grant. You see, that gave politicians in a lot of cases the ability to say, we delivered that school, we delivered that Belfast Metropolitan College, we delivered that project, but it was on the never never, and the interest payments were accruing, which were the money that was going to pay for those projects and continues to pay the interest to build those projects. Well, that's now taken out of hospitals and schools and the needs of people, as opposed to the wants of extremists in many cases. We have no proportional allocation of the UK government's 4.8 billion levelling up to help communities in NI to be on a par with the rest of GB. We have a tsunami of Stormont cuts, but none for the North-South implementation bodies. Each body operates on an all-island basis under the overall policy direction of the North-South Ministerial Council. We have £400 million for a Bloody Sunday inquiry, but none for Le Mans, none for Ballykelly, none for T-Ban, none for Kings Mills, none for Corrie Square, Newry, Ballygolly, Claudy, Shankill, Warrenpoint, Tullyvallen, Coleraine, Lisburn, Dartley, Order Ethnic Cleansing, Bloody Friday, Enniskillen, to name but a few. We don't have a level playing field. We have no incentives for onshore or offshore exploration of hydrocarbons, unlike the rest of the UK. We have no additional electricity interconnectors with Scotland to avail of their surplus electricity generation. 2/3 of the renewable energy produced in Scotland is exported south of the border to England. We have disproportionate funding for Irish medium and integrated schools. We have restrictions and removal of country's union flag from Belfast City Hall to war memorials in North Down. We have 160 million for Casement Park to deliver 5 games, 450 minutes of Euro football, but no additional funding for our NHS or indeed for any other departmental budget, from education to policing. We have no meaningful response or withdrawal from talks with the NIO as they intimate, indeed blackmail unionists to return to Stormont to implement the union-breaking, constitutional changing protocol, Rishi Sunak's Windsor Framework. They withhold hundreds of millions of UK hospital funding and UK levelling up payments, and in fact they give the money for the needs of the people of Northern Ireland, Unionist, Protestant, Catholic, Republican, right across the board. They use that funding on the wants of extremists, paying for Irish language, paying for, Casement Park projects over and above what other people get. Are we beginning to realise that Stormont doesn't work for Northern Ireland Unionists? We have no meaningful response. Sorry, I read that one. Then there's a silence regarding the Irish state-sponsored terrorism. This is a project that we're working on. They were the Irish government, they trained, they financed, they armed the Provisional IRA, leading to 30 plus years of societal conflict, carpet bombings and mass murder. The facts and evidence have now been exposed in 2023, and we're going to come to that. You know, people, there are just a few things that we are in receipt of as a result of being part of this so-called peace process, when in fact it's actually an appeasement process. And any unionist that doesn't want to stop it in its tracks, any unionist that doesn't want to say that enough is enough, any unionist that wants to go in and to be business as usual, whilst the people right across the board here in Northern Ireland are all treated like second-class citizens, whilst that the money goes to the wants of extremists as opposed to the needs of people, whilst that we're crying out for hospitals, hospital treatments, for dentist treatments, for doctors' treatments. We're calling out for, you know, the basic human rights that we have here in a society living in the United Kingdom. We're crying out for all of those services. And if we go back to Stormont, what happens is that it's business as usual, and the money gets, well, if we're in the state that we are in now, and if the public finances in Northern Ireland are in such a state, why would we give these people any more scope to bankrupt us as a people? Northern Ireland could be very, very prosperous, you know. It could be prosperous for each and every person that lives in Northern Ireland. Not just unionists, that's nationalists also. But it's never going to change, people, whilst that we have politicians that are prepared to continue with the gravy train and continue with the appeasement process and continue with the, well, I'm going to use this term, levelling up. The only levelling up that needs to be done is the levelling up of the playing field, in where that the appeasement process would stop, in where the unionists are first-class citizens, in where that, well, we're either going to cater for everybody on an equal basis or we are not. That's the only levelling up that needs to be done. So I think that we've spoke for long enough. I do want to have a wee look at the tests that unionism set not too long ago, when the DUP had promised unionists here in Northern Ireland that they would not be doing anything unless that their tests were actually met, and they would judge absolutely everything based on their 7 tests. I'm looking for the unionist tests here. Just bear with me. I think I'll just have to reload the tests here. I've got them behind me, but we want to go up and we want to just go through them for a second. So just bear with me whilst I load. Here we go. So we're going to superimpose these tests over the top of our screen, and I'm talking to the British Unionists here in Northern Ireland. And you know, I'm impressing upon you one thing, is that we need to ensure that the DUP don't roll over. We need to ensure that they stand up for us. We need to ensure that whilst that they're in power, whilst that we've given them power, that we insist that they carry out the mandate that we've given them. And the mandate that we have given them is for to return us to being first-class citizens, to remove the border from the North Channel, and to insist that they will not be participating in this appeasement process any longer, whilst there's not a level playing field for unions. Now, is that unfair to ask for? Is that unreasonable to ask for? I don't think it is. Let's have a look at their tests. So, any new arrangements must fulfil Article 6 of the Act of the Union. So, to fulfil Article 6 of the Act of the Union, what that actually means is that in Article 6 of the Act of the Union, what it states is that people in England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, the United Kingdom, should all be on an equal footing in terms of trade. So there should be no border checks. There should be no EU customs and regulatory inspired border posts at Larne, Belfast, and Warrenpoint. That the Act of the Union, which lies today in a disapplied state, which was confirmed last year in the Supreme Court to us when we took the case against it, against the constitutional changing protocol. But it was confirmed that the Act of the Union had been disapplied in Northern Ireland. You see, to fulfil Article 6 of the Act of the Union, popping that back up again, means that the Act of the Union has to be reinstated again, that Northern Ireland citizens have to have that border removed from the North Channel, that there has to be no EU-inspired customs and regulatory borders, invisible, no sense of a border. There should be no border, full stop. This is the United Kingdom. This is one country. England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, constituent parts of that country. There should be free flow of goods right around the United Kingdom. Now, that's what fulfill Article 6 of the Act of the Union means. Now, you just watch for our DUP people coming in the next few days saying, like Peter Robinson did just a few days ago, well, we've got a good deal. In a negotiation, you don't get everything you want. Well, you don't expect to become second-class citizens. You don't expect to be, not even listened to. If it's a negotiation, it's about satisfying the needs of people, not the wants of extremists. Not rolling over and appeasing the threatening behaviour of Conor Murphy and Sinn Fein in Pembroke College 2 Septembers ago, when he said, if the protocol is altered in any way, shape or form, then Sinn Fein are walking away from the process. We've got a Sinn Fein gun and a Sinn Fein bomb held to our heads. Now, Jeffrey Donaldson, we do not give you the authority to roll, to capitulate, to appease those people, we don't give you the authority to give in to those Sinn Fein IRA blackmail tactics. To avoid any diversion of trade, to not constitute a border in the Irish Sea. Well, you see, again, I've heard Jimmy Bryson say in the past few weeks there that there's two things that needs to be fulfilled here. Is the Article 6 of the Act of Union has to be reinstated, which means if that's reinstated, and your test for that is simply the Windsor Framework has to go. Now, if the Windsor Framework is redrawn, if the European courts don't have oversight over the trade in Northern Ireland, if they do not have governance over the trade in Northern Ireland, well, maybe then we can start to look at things and believe and expect that it is a good deal for unionism. But unless that happens, well, anything that's going to be anything that the DUP try to sell to you beyond that Windsor Framework being taken out of the equation, or Article 6 of the Act of the Union being fully reinstated, in where that citizens in Northern Ireland are on an equal footing with people in England, Scotland, and Wales. Anything which comes short of that is not a deal which any unionist could accept, because they accept that'll be the end. That will be the end of the United Kingdom. And Jeffrey Donaldson, you have a great responsibility on your head, because you could be the man that could finish the United Kingdom. Now, that would be a great legacy for you, wouldn't it? And anyone else that stands alongside Jeffrey Donaldson. Well, that would be a great legacy for you whenever you are named and shamed as the people which put the final nails in the coffin of Northern Ireland Unionism. That's up to you if you want to do that. But I hope that you accept that people in Northern Ireland will not let you away with it. You'll be named, you'll be shamed for everyone to see who finished the entire United Kingdom. And that's a promise, that's not a threat. That's using my right, our rights as Unionists in Northern Ireland to point out the people who would potentially be traitorous towards what it means to be a Unionist living in Northern Ireland. I couldn't comprehend, anyone doing that. I mean, 2023, did I ever expect it would come to the point where a Unionist would say that we're half a Unionist and that's okay, we've got a good deal? That's what Peter Robinson said. But who wants to listen to Peter Robinson? Now, we're not here to fight with anybody. We're here merely to point out the gravity of the situation that we actually face. It's not very often that it comes to the point whereby that you have to say, that you have to tell people that we don't get any more chances after this. If Jeffrey Donaldson rules, if the DUP hierarchy, who potentially will rule and who will be named and shamed, if they rule, if they create the circumstances whereby that the union wasn't fought for in a meaningful, proactive way, wasn't defended, protected and enhanced by the leaders that we put in place, if they create those circumstances, well, that's up to themselves if they do that. But don't expect people to look upon you favourably for destroying every single thing that many people in this country has ever believed in. We were taken away from doing what it is that we've been doing for some months now, in where that we've been researching the Irish state-sponsored terrorism, which strategized for in 1965. The Irish government, I kid you not, between what was known as the Minister for External Affairs, which became the Minister for Foreign Affairs in later years. The Minister for External Affairs passed a letter to the Taoiseach. And both have, well, they're both of IRA pedigree, by the way. They both got blood in their hands. And I mean blood. Both people in 1965 in the Irish government who wrote the blueprint for the civil rights and the so-called citizens' defence committees. We have it in their Irish state papers that there was a letter passed, that we have it, whereby that the strategy was laid down to create agitation, political agitation, social justice, they called it, in Northern Ireland, where they would fight for housing rights and jobs, whenever they had the same housing rights and same jobs as everybody else in Northern Ireland. But you see, it was a strategy that was drawn by two murderous members of the IRA government, and both are responsible for murder. And we can prove this, and we will show this coming very, very soon, that there was a strategy drawn in 1965 that was adopted by the civil rights and the so-called citizens' defence committees, who were later turned into provisional IRA killing machines, as a plan to destabilise Northern Ireland from the 12th of August going forward. The IRA, or the Irish government, the then Irish government in 1969, they strategized for, they trained, they armed, they financed, they set up, they provided logistical support, and they gave a professional propaganda machine, a professional propaganda campaign, which was to spin the narrative across the world that the IRA were, well, they were freedom fighters just fighting for their rights, whenever this was a plan that was written and put out, and which caused destabilization in Northern Ireland, where many, many people lost their lives. And the Irish government cannot wash their hands of what it is that they're responsible for. And coming soon in the real history of the Troubles, Irish state-sponsored terrorism, part 3, coming very soon to a screen near you, in where that we can show evidence from Irish state papers of exactly what I say in a conclusive way. So where's our unionist politicians actually holding the Irish government responsible for what it was that they created in 1969, causing the circumstances in where that many people lost their lives here in Northern Ireland? The Irish government cannot wash their hands of their part in the formation of the provisional IRA from as early as 1968 going forward. And we can show that. So coming soon. Playing us out, people. We've been here just over an hour. Never intended to stay this long, but I just want to play us out with something. And yeah, I'll be back over the course of the next couple of days with some more information. So to recap, and I'm appealing to the DUP right now. I'm appealing to the hierarchy of the DUP right now. You know, don't do it. Don't finish Northern Ireland. Don't put the final nails in the coffin of Northern Ireland. Don't walk on the graves of every single person who has ever stood up for Northern Ireland. Don't. Just don't do it. Because if you do, we're not going to let you away with it. And I don't mean that we're going to physically fight with you. What we mean is that what I mean personally, and others that I've talked to, is that we will name and we will shame and we will show exactly what it is that you've done to contribute to the ending of the greatest union that, well, the world has ever seen. That union being the United Kingdom, which consists of England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. Don't finish it. Don't be, don't be rolled over. Don't be bullied by Chris Heaton Harris when he says that he'll beguile you, that he would charm you in a deceptive way. Don't roll over. Stand strong. Stand. Have the people stand behind you. Because for the roll will cause the biggest disconnect that unionism has ever seen. Jeffrey Donaldson, the weight of the world is on your shoulders. Do you want to be the person that destroys unionism and the United Kingdom in one fell swoop? Peter Robinson may want you to roll. It's your head that's on the chopping block, not his. Playing us out with one of the installments of the Irish state-sponsored terrorism, and this is coming in our next part 3 of Irish state-sponsored terrorism. And thanks very much for everyone that comes along, and for the people that would come along in the future to watch this. Please share it with far and wide, with who you think that needs to understand the gravity of the situation which is facing Northern Ireland unionism in the next few days. I'm not here to fight with anybody, but I'm here to stand up for my rights as a unionist living in Northern Ireland. I'm here to stand up for the people who stood before me. I'm here to ensure that people do not walk on the graves of every single man, woman, and child that has ever lost their lives because of IRA Republican terrorism. I'm here to ensure that those that have give their lives, to defend this place, that their efforts were not in vain. That's what I'm here for. Thanks very much for listening, and I'll speak to you all very soon. To the real history of the Troubles, Irish state-sponsored terrorism, Episode 1, Part 3. Before we continue, there is something worth re-emphasizing and drawing your attention to. In Episode 1, Part 2 of our documentary, you learnt that a man called Frank Aiken, who was deputy head of the Irish government in 1969 and who held the position of Minister for External Affairs in 1965. This man was the leader of a ruthless IRA murder squad which participated in the naked sectarian ethnic cleansing of Protestants along the border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. Frank Aiken was responsible for some of the most gruesome murders ever to be seen within the British Isles. In 1965, in a direct communication to the Taoiseach, Frank Aiken laid out a strategy which set out a plan of action for Irish nationalists and Republicans in Northern Ireland. This strategy was later implemented by the so-called Northern Ireland Civil Rights Association and also by the more militant, extreme Republican nuisance squads who used the cover of and directed every movement of the so-called Northern Ireland Citizens Defence Committees. In a communication by Frank Aiken to the Taoiseach Sean Limas on 27th of February 1965, he wrote, "A representative political organisation with a club in every town and every village should be set up, and they should engage in effective political action. As an immediate field of action, each group should concentrate on so-called social justice, using matters of housing and employment as a focus of their activism."